Good morning, everybody. So today we'll do another real-time update. It's kind of sad, because this could be a teaching video, but it's going to be an update. Oh, somebody's getting into my camera here. I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. Let me begin with, I was laughing earlier. I'm uploading our regular videos that you see nightly, and that's where you see all of those different links. YouTube, Google. The reason I do that is because certain videos that expose corruption in the past were muted, and there's all types of technology. Let me start with that. John, out of all of your talking about corruption and all, which officials have gone to your websites and Facebook page and actually have sat behind their computer and looked? You know, one of them is the new Sheriff Hooper. Now, I know he watches because, you know, we live in a day of technology. And when the actual feds, meaning the cops for cops, when they are investigating corruption in a police department, they have the legal ability. We talk about FISA warrants and all of that. There's technology where every cop, every sheriff that even reads your website can be remotely recorded, not by me, but by others that are investigating corruption. But I would just simply say this, that yes, and I'm glad Mr. Hooper decided to begin looking at my videos and checking out my website. And he will say, how does he know? I know. Mr. Markle, Chief Mike Markle. The chief, this is not a lie. This is true. But so he'll also get some insight. You see, Scripture says, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. Sadly, we had a black chief by the name of Chief Simpson who died in a motorcycle wreck coming back one day. I have the chief's picture on my walls. I just saw it. I pray for his wife, Tanya. There's Chief Simpson right there. This is a prayer wall for people that either passed away or all types of, I pray. That's like a prayer thing for me. So what about me, John? Mike Markle, the neighbor to your friend on Stewart Street. Chief, I'm sober 6 years and 2 months, or 3 months. You're not. You make a regular ride just about every night to our liquor store in Florida Bluff called Specs. And you go down that back street, oh, I forget the name of it, I've driven the street, Knickerbocker, or the back street from Stewart Street to Specs. And you buy quite an amount of alcoholic beverages. And so we as the community would simply say, make sure you're not driving drunk, Chief. John, are you watching? No, I never watched that. But others have watched that. You see, things in Corpus Christi, with all of the corruption in this place, the eyes are in every place. And if I gave you a list of all the things that took place with some of my friends who died, forced things in cop cars that are criminal and disgusting. And by these officers, where are they today? They are the top echelons of this department today. Crimes of a sexual nature, crimes of intimidation, crimes, a history of it. And these guys, some of them, are your top CCPD commanders, leaders with seniority, getting a ton of money with a history that the average citizen would be in prison for life for. Mr. Du Bois Lister. Du Bois Lister. See, now look, I'm on the side of people who've been murdered by you. I consider the killing of Du Bois Lister a murder. And if you want me to recount why, I'll tell you why. There are people, white, black, Hispanic, that do indeed die at the hands of cops in this country. Some of them, these last few years, some of these cops have been held accountable. But in the past 20 years or so, it was very difficult to ever hold them accountable. But let me tell you why Du Bois Lister's death, in my mind, is a murder. A black man. Because that was not a cop stop that had to do with a bank robbery or criminal activity or any of that nature. It was a CCPD cop who has connections to a judge. I forget who he's connected to in this city. One of the ladies. Might be the lady that recently just left one of the positions, has got another top position. Canales, maybe Barbara Canales. I forget now if it's Vinales, one of the connections. Mr. Lister was pulled over because he had a light out on his license plate, something of that nature. That was the suspicion. Meaning there wasn't really, we're out looking for somebody that did a crime. We found a light out, a reason to do a stop. And when Du Bois Lister was stopped, the officer, who is still getting paid and on the job, then asked for his insurance. And there was a question whether or not Mr. Lister actually had his proof of insurance or not. And then the cop requested that Mr. Lister get out of his vehicle and sit in the back of the cop car. Why? Why? And obviously, because of the history in this country, Mr. Lister was nervous. He did something wrong. He got in his car and left. So now you have a hot pursuit of a cop that should have waited until backup arrived. He was somewhat of a rookie cop, still getting paid. And where did Mr. Lister flee to? He fled to an area in Corpus Christi where he lived. And sadly, we do have a form of segregation, areas that are referred to like black areas of town, white areas of town, which is sad, but that was a place of safety. And as he was running to his house, where his family was, he worked. Mr. Lister was a good man, worked for the ports many years. The cop continued to pursue. Not because it was a robbery, a rape, many of the things that some of you have done to some of my friends. No, because he didn't have proof of insurance. And then you went and engaged with him, and he was a fairly big man, Mr. Lister. Why? And then that engagement led to you giving him a warning, I'm going to have to shoot you, and you killed him. That's why it's a murder. It wasn't a high violent thing that you were seeking somebody that did something wrong, that is shooting and a killing. It was a stupid license plate light. So now my side has not murdered any of you. But your side has murdered at least one of us, besides the other crimes you've committed against us. You, the Corpus Christi Police Department. You, Mr. Markle, who goes and possibly in driving drunk every night when you're going to Specs in Flower Bluff to buy large amounts of alcohol, which we don't want somebody leading the department with an alcohol problem. You guys who are viewing everything you can, whether it's Mr. Hooper who remotely is viewing, and I'm glad you're viewing it, Mr. Hooper, the island cop. So we'll just do this little update. How much resources do you spend pursuing those? You have a history with some of the friends, and some have died, where criminal acts were committed against them by Corpus Christi police officers. And when those people tried to get some relief by going to law enforcement because criminal acts were committed against them, you then began to pursue those people, harass those people, and continue to commit criminal acts. And what is your history now on that? Those guys are some of your top-ranking officers at the Corpus Christi Police Department, which is shocking to me. Which is shocking to me. That cop that killed Mr. Lister should have been held on charges for that. Mr. Markle should have reviewed the standard policy, if you have one, and said, you do not pursue a nonviolent, when you ran the plates, he was out for nothing, no warrants on that man. You say, let him go into his home, call for backup, knock on the door, look, no, I'm a rookie. I'm going to pursue you, engage with you, and then tell you I might have to shoot you, which you did, and killed him. I did look at Miss D.A. Gonzalez's Facebook page. I normally don't, but I did check it. And he talked about the rookie cadets that just graduated. And he said, I support them all. Somebody made a comment on his Facebook page, F the police, because of some of the things that have gone on. Let me say, the cops that are good cops are all painted with the brush because the culture of this department in this city is the bad cops. You say that the bad cops are the ones that are ingrained in the seniority in the city. The ones with that history that is now the leadership in this department. With that history, and that history is known. That history is known. Though some of the acts that some of my homeless friends had to do, those are sexual assaults on those guys. You know it. The people that know these cops that do that know it. It's not a hidden secret. On duty in cop cars. And you expect this community to say you are serving the public? So, welcome to my friends that are viewing. Of course, I'm not remotely recording anybody. Federal authorities that are investigating corrupt cops, they have the ability to do that. Brother Barr, the incoming attorney, the guy who replaced Sessions, and then Matt Whitaker was there. They have the ability to look into corrupt cops or sheriffs or whoever else. They have the ability to do that. But most of all, God sees everything that's going on. When I used to go to the firehouse and check the trucks in the morning, and you had a whole system, and then you go on duty during the day. But that system is not intended, if you're an officer, to go in, to do your routine, and then to engage in the assault, sexual assaults, specifically causing homeless people to perform oral sex on an officer in a cop car. Known by everybody, known by the people that have rose the ranks, known open public history of that. History of it. The only question was how willing the participants were. What a disgrace. What an utter, complete, criminal history of that element of you. And then you say the boys in blue. Granted, there are 2 officers being held accountable for certain crimes which are nothing to the level of the things that I've seen go on for so many years. I wonder if those 2 officers are just scapegoats, Tommy Cabello and Norma De Leon. I wonder if they're just scapegoats. Crimes of collusion, selling confiscated drugs on the streets, collusion with criminal gangs that are engaged in organized criminal activity, and officers taking cuts and payoffs. You know, in the 70s in New Jersey, right by New York City, right by the George Washington Bridge, where you saw some of my videos, there was a black brother who was involved in a lot of drug dealing in the city of New York. And he was selling his stuff cheap. It was heroin. But he was getting, it was criminal. And he had a connection out of Vietnam. And it was actually during the war. The Vietnam War was still ongoing. And sadly, the connection was corrupt, and the heroin was flown into Newark Airport, Liberty International, on military cargo jets. So he sold the stuff out of New York City. He wasn't originally from New York, but he brought his family over from like the Midwest. They had a big organization. The Italian Mafia, some of them that lived in New Jersey, so if you watch The Sopranos, that was fairly realistic. A lot of the Mafia lived in New Jersey. But they called him in one day because he was undercutting the sales of the other heroin, okay? A lot of people think that the Italian Mafia didn't get into drugs, and that, no, they dealt all that. And said, look, you're ruining our business because you're selling at a cut rate. Sadly, that's criminal. Do you know, without giving you the whole story, he would drive over the George Washington Bridge, and there's one exit. I've done it many times, and it says the last exit is a picture of me walking over the last exit in New Jersey, or because you're going to go right into New York City, which is, of course, the state of New York. So, but it'll warn people, because once you get stuck on the George Washington Bridge, you're going to go into the Bronx, you're going into the city. You're going to be in Harlem, where I walk. But one day he went over, and somebody pulled him over. It's a New York City cop, and he had other cops with him. And the cop warned him and said, what are you doing in New York City? They knew it. They wanted money. They wanted the payoff. That was pure criminal corruption. Murders, killings, shootings by cops. But the black brother, who indeed was running that heroin ring out in New York in the 70s, he didn't like it. She had just gotten married that day. And his wife, loved his wife, he took his mother to church every Sunday. And those crooked cops out of New York City stopped him on that day. Later on, that crooked cop, his very expensive sports car was blown up in front of his house out of retaliation for pulling him over. But that network of people that were cops, that were engaged in murder, killing, criminal activity like you would never believe. They were more criminal than the drug dealers. They were more criminal than the Mafia. They were more criminal than every criminal that they worked with. And everybody knew that. And it was just a strange thing. But there was a good cop at that time. A nice guy. He wouldn't take payoffs. He handed in, that it was common at that time in the 70s, if you stopped a vehicle and there was a large amount of drug money, the cops kept the money and split it. And this was common. But there was a few movies made on Serpico, things like that. But he wouldn't keep it. He eventually busted and cracked down on the corrupt cops. And that corrupt cop whose car was blown up, he was so corrupt, when they finally were going to arrest him, he killed himself. Shot himself. But the officer that did that was a just man, the one who investigated, and all the other cops hated him. Because he said, no, we're not supposed to be. They hated him. They wanted to kill him. Cops wanted to kill the good cops. And he eventually stopped that drug organization. He himself. And you know, he was like prosecutor too for New York City at that time. But he was one of the few that were not corrupt. Eventually, this is true now, he quit his job. The cop who busted the black drug leader, okay? He quit his job, became a defense attorney, and actually defended the guy he busted. They became friends. But that black guy, he knew how corrupt those cops were. And this was a white officer that finally busted him. But they became friends. Because the people that are in the underground, they work with these criminal cops. And they despise them. They despise them. They despise them because those that are in the criminal lifestyle have chosen that lifestyle, and they recognize that lifestyle. And when there's cops that are worse than them, they don't like that. They're like, you should have just stayed on the streets and been gangsters with us. But instead you're getting paid by the citizens, your tax money is supporting you. Nobody likes that. Even the guys on the streets, in that scenario I gave you, they hated those cops. There's a black brother I met one day walking in New York. Lonnie was sitting in front of the Port Authority on one of my trips. And Lonnie was drunk. And I was going to smoke my last cigarette before I went into the bus terminal to go back to New Jersey. This was 4 years ago. But he was in the street, Brother Lonnie. I remember his name. And he was big. He's a big guy. He was a little, somewhat drunk, scaring the tourists. Because you could see everybody like going through, oh no. And he was, you know what he was saying? I remember. He was saying, they're going to put my black ass back in jail. And I was just smoking, sitting down with these glasses. Just sitting there. And then Lonnie asked me for a cigarette. I didn't know his name yet. He said something to me like, and so I got up, smoked, come here, brother, what's up? So he could see I was like very friendly and comfortable. And he saw that, looked a little strange. He said, who's going to put your black ass in jail, brother? And then he just looks at me, he says, are you a cop? Because he could see. The normal response he was getting from the tourists in New York would be different than the one I was like I knew him for 100 years. I said, no, I'm not a cop, Lonnie. He told me his name a few minutes after I met him. I said, then he told me, sell me those sunglasses, these actual glasses. I said, no, brother, they're prescriptions. Which they are. These are $150 prescription glasses. These are just not sunglasses, and I wear them because I see. So I said, brother, I grew up here, I'm from here, and I come back now, I'm doing ministry on the streets. So then the shield broke. He said, you know why I'm not in jail, John? By then he told me his name was Lonnie, I'm John. He said, because of God. He said, and the cops do want to put my black ass in jail. But then as I talked to him just for 15 minutes that day, he wanted to take a picture. That's the picture. I did not do a video with Lonnie. I said, let me get a picture of you, brother. I do this website. Huh? He said, let's get one together, John. So he put his arm around me, and we got a tourist kid. Take a picture of us. Somebody there took a picture of me and Lonnie. In that brief 15 minutes talking to Lonnie, telling him about the Lord. I said, man, I moved to Texas, Lonnie, but I grew up on the other side of the river on North Bergen. He said, I'd like to go back to Texas with you, John. Isn't that strange? He said, you know what he told me? This is true. He said, but they would shoot my black ass. Did he prophesy to Boy Lister?